Sunday, November 6 a.m. Breaking news: missing plane spotted in Jasper Mountain Range. According to a statement from Sheriff Ted Carter, wreckage of a Cessna 210, believed to be the same one flown by Dr. Edward Tolman, was spotted in the Jasper Mountain Range. A SAR, search and rescue team, was called in when 20 minutes after takeoff, the plane fell off radar yesterday at 4:20. Two helicopters from Mountain Rescue Association, MRA, searched the perimeter of the area yesterday but didn't spot the downed plane until this morning. Due to low clouds and high winds, visibility of the crash site was poor, and they were unable to spot any signs of survivors. Flying with Dr. Tallman were his wife, Amy, their two teenage children, Mindy and Chase, as well as a family friend, Tammy Collins. Emergency ground crews have been put on call but are waiting for a break in the weather. A spokeswoman was quoted saying that they know it's imperative to get to the site as soon as possible, but the safety of their crew must be considered. It was speculated that Dr. Tolman and his family may have flown into Jasper to take part in a genetic study. However, no local research facility reports any of the Tolman's participation. Meanwhile, friends of the Tolman family and the parents of Tammy Collins are in Jasper praying the news will be good once search and rescue teams are on the ground. One day earlier, Saturday, October 31st, 10:30 a.m. Chase Tolman watched as the bright-eyed, bloodthirsty lab tech tied a large elastic band around the middle of his arm, hoping to expose a few of Chase's veins. "There's a good one," the woman said, as she passed two fingers over the crook of his arm where a blue vein now bulged out. "You have great veins," she said, sounding sincere. Her hands were cold, extra cold, making a chill run up his arm. "Just a little stick and we'll be done." She smiled at him and reached over to pick up the needle with the large tube attached, taking the plastic tip off the syringe. Gosh, how much blood did the woman need? He freaking hated needles. But he didn't flinch. 14 was too old to flinch. He hadn't even cried when he broke his arm last summer during baseball practice. It had hurt like hell, but his coach had been the one to take him to the hospital, and the last thing he wanted was to look weak in front of his coach. Chase glanced around the small lab in the doctor's office that was practically hidden in some remote part of the Rockies. He wasn't exactly sure why his dad had insisted on them taking part in this research study, but it had to be pretty important for his dad to get his plane checked out and fly them up from Houston to participate. Not that Chase liked it. Who gave up their blood for no reason? But the promise of a weekend in a cabin in the mountains, plus the plane ride, made it worth it. The fact that his sister's best friend, Tammy Collins, tagged along made it more than worth it. Hell, he'd let them stick him with needles all day for the pleasure of seeing her in her bathing suit again. Holy cow, she'd looked hot last night when she joined him and his sister in the hot tub. For a second last night, he would have sworn she'd been playing footsies with him. It could have been an accident, but he hoped not, and he wished like hell he hadn't shifted away. He liked to think she'd finally stopped looking at him as her best friend's baby brother and started looking at him like a guy, a potential boyfriend kind of guy. Hell, he was less than a year younger than she and stood a good 8 inches taller. Most people took him for at least 16. Feeling the prick of the needle, the medical tech dug around for a vein. To distract himself from the pain, he closed his eyes and thought of Tommy's dips and curves, of how her dark brown hair had looked dancing on her bare shoulders. It worked, too. Unlike most of his friends who were into computer games and denied their fascination with the opposite sex, Chase gave up his denial. He'd rather study a pretty girl than get to the next level of Battlefield 4 any day of the week. Hell, he'd rather touch or kiss a girl than play baseball, and he really liked playing baseball. Problem was, he was better at sports than he was at even getting close to first base with a girl. Or at least that's what Susie Muller told him last year after the 8th grade dance. But the girl had braces. How was he supposed to kiss her? Somehow, he just knew if he got the opportunity to kiss Tommy, he'd be better at it. She didn't have braces, and her mouth was so soft-looking. Hell, he'd practiced kissing her in his fantasies 100 times. He should be an expert by now. All done, the lab tech said, patting Chase's arm with one hand while she pressed a cotton swab over the tiny drop of blood oozing from the needle's prick. Oops, I'm out of Band-Aids here. Hold this for me. He put his finger on the ball of cotton. She reached around to get a Band-Aid out of the cabinet. He kept his finger on the piece of swab, but probably not hard enough because a red stream of blood seeped from under the cotton ball and oozed down the crook in his arm. Push on it a little harder, she said, still facing the cabinet, as if she knew he was bleeding. Then she turned and peeled the Band-Aid open. As she secured a bandage over the puffy piece of cotton, he glanced up at her. When her eyes shifted upward, he almost gasped at how her eyes glowed. They had been green before, but now they were fluorescent lime green. As if self-conscious, she glanced away and seemed to purposely not look back at him, or at least it appeared that way. You can go, she said, taking more Band-Aids out of the cabinet and putting them on her cart. He didn't have to be told twice. Not actually scared because he was too old to be scared, but slightly freaked out, he rose from the chair and started out. As he stepped out of the room, he heard his dad's deep voice boom down the hall. He looked over his shoulder. His dad stood in the doorway of another small room with a man wearing a white lab coat. "You'll let me know the results as soon as you can, right?" his father asked. "Of course," the man said. "What results? They were here for a research study, weren't they?" Chase watched. The two men shake hands, and then, feeling as if he was eavesdropping, he turned and went in search of the waiting room to find his mom and hopefully Tommy. "Did you cry?" his older sister Mindy asked as Chase walked up to where she stood with his mom and Tommy. He shot his sister a frown and would have shot her the bird if his mom hadn't been beside her. "Not as hard as you, I'm sure," he smarted back, looking at her Band-Aid. His sister, barely 5 feet tall, could always be a difficult person, but she upped her game anytime Tommy was around. Why, he didn't know. Did she secretly know that he had a crush on Tommy and just wanted to make him look bad? "Did it hurt?" Tommy asked, looking from his sister to him. "A little," Mindy answered, and tossed her dark hair over her shoulder. "No, it didn't," Chase said. His sister rolled her blue eyes. "Be careful, or he might ask you to kiss it," she snickered. Okay, that did it. He didn't care if his mom saw or not. He gave his sister the third finger salute, accompanied by a go screw yourself scowl. "Chase," Mom reprimanded, but he ignored her. If she wanted him to behave, she was going to have to control her firstborn, who excelled at being a difficult person. His sister looked triumphant at getting Chase scolded, but he noted that Tommy just grinned. "What kind of test was it?" Tommy asked, and her dark brown eyes looked back at his mom. "Just a general research study on genetics," his mom answered. Chase thought about his dad asking for the results. Something wasn't adding up. "You mean, like, if you guys will get cancer or something? My mom had a test to see if she would get breast cancer. She won't. Her blood work confirmed her chest is safe," Tommy said. He almost laughed. Yet, right after hearing Tommy say breast and chest, the temptation to glance at Tommy's chest beneath her red sweater swept through him. However, not wanting to get caught ogling, he reached down and picked up a sports magazine and pretended to be interested in the cover. But hands down, he'd rather have been looking at her chest than Billy Hamilton's ugly mug. He didn't care how good the guy was at baseball. "No, it's not for cancer," Mom said. "Then what was it for?" Tommy asked, innocently enough. Chase glanced up, his own curiosity piqued, thinking his mom might have learned something about it by now. "It's just a research study." Frustration sounded in his mom's voice. Though he didn't understand why she would be upset at Tommy for asking the same questions he'd heard her ask his father 2 weeks ago. Oddly, Dad had given Mom the same vague answer as she gave Tommy now. His dad walked out from the back room, wearing his own Band-Aid. Right then, it occurred to Chase that they hadn't tested his mom. If it was really just some random research study, why hadn't they tested her as well? He almost asked, but decided his dad would answer better if they were alone. Mom handed Dad his coat. "Thanks." He slipped it on and then leaned down to kiss her cheek. And he really had to lean, too. At 6'4", he towered above Chase's mom, who was only a few inches over 5 feet. Nothing against Mom, but Chase had always been glad he'd inherited his dad's height gene. "Please don't start the kissing stuff in public," Mindy said. "It's embarrassing." Mom frowned at her. Dad grinned. I can't help it if your mom still does it for me. You want to see a real kiss? Please, no, Mindy said seriously when their dad slipped his arm around Mom's waist and pulled her closer. Stop it, Mom said and giggled. I'd like to see it, Tommy said. I think it's sweet, his dad laughed. Since we had to skip breakfast for the test, are you guys ready to grab an early lunch? I'm starving, Mindy said. But Tommy and I want to go to the street fair in Old Jamestown. It's sort of a Halloween festival. They've got rides, a haunted house, palm readers, and fortune tellers. They even have a band playing in the town square. And the boy who was staying in the cabin next door was going too, Chase thought, remembering that Eric had mentioned it last night when he came over to chat while they'd been in the hot tub. Chase didn't particularly care for Eric, or the way he'd stared at Mindy and Tommy in their bathing suits. Sure, Chase had appreciated Tommy, but there was a difference between appreciating and gawking. Eric had gawked. Thankfully, he'd seemed more interested in Mindy than Tommy, though Chase didn't particularly like the dude staring at his sister either. Baxter hadn't been thrilled about it either. Baxter, their black lab, normally liked everyone, but he'd growled at the kid. Chase had decided to go with the motto, if Baxter didn't like you, Chase didn't like you. Not that Mindy seemed to mind Eric's rude stares. Heck, what did he know? Maybe girls liked to be gawked at. Chase listened as his sister continued to sell the festival to their parents. He seriously doubted that Mindy would tell them about Eric going to the festival. His parents had a thing about Mindy not dating until she was 16. Mindy, however, had a thing about boys. His mom looked at her watch. We could stop by for an hour, but we have skiing lessons at 1. I don't want to do the skiing lessons, Mindy whined. We did that yesterday. Why can't you just drop us off and let us stay the day? You and Dad can pick us up after skiing. Please. Chase stared down at the magazine he still held, hoping his mom said no. He'd already had the perfect day planned. They'd spend 4 hours skiing, take Baxter for a walk at the park a mile from the cabin, and then come back and go to the hot tub. He really wanted to see if Tommy rubbed her foot against his again. If she did, this time he wasn't going to move his leg. His mom hesitated. Chase glanced up. Say no. Say no. Sorry, his mom continued. I'm not comfortable with you two alone at a street fair all day. Mom, Mindy whined, I'm 15, not 5. Why don't we compromise? His dad joined in. Take Chase with you, and I think you three will be fine. He could live with that compromise, Chase thought. He'd lose skiing, and Baxter would lose out on his walk, but going to the festival with Tommy could be fun, and they could do the hot tub when they came back. Yup, Chase liked the sound of that, and what he liked more was the fact that his dad gave him the role of taking care of his sister instead of the other way around. As much as he liked it, Mindy didn't. She rolled her eyes. I don't want to babysit. Chase scowled. Didn't you hear him? I'm the one babysitting you. He almost said something about Eric being there just to get even for her difficult person behavior. But right before he tattled, he closed his mouth. Just because his sister was a mess didn't mean he had to be one. It's so unfair, Mindy snapped. I'm older, and you're always acting as if... He's bigger and twice your weight, Dad said, pointing out that Mindy had inherited her hygiene from Mom. And bad things are less likely to happen with 3 of you together. Mindy let out a huff of disappointment. But it's the deal breaker as far as I'm concerned. Dad gave Mindy a stern look and then looked at their mom. What do you say, hun? You okay if all 3 go? His mom paused. I guess if Chase goes with you, it would be fine. She looked at Chase. Do you mind going with your sister, or were you set on going skiing? He hesitated, glancing at Mindy for a pregnant pause, hoping she appreciated that he could refuse and all her plans would be flushed down the toilet. Not that he would flush them. If it took putting up with Mindy to be with Tommy, he'd do it in a snap. But his sister didn't have to know that. He hoped she didn't know it. The less power she held over him, the better. Nah, I'll go, Chase finally said. Great, said Tommy, and she actually reached over and gave his arm a soft squeeze. Her touch sent tiny currents of something really sweet through his body and had him remembering how it felt when her foot had brushed up against his. Blinking, he gazed into her face. She smiled so big that her dark brown eyes crinkled. Was she really that happy he was going? Pulling her hand back, she looked back at his parents. I've been wanting to have my palm read for years. She pushed her dark hair over one shoulder, and he watched as it cascaded across her back. For some crazy reason, he wondered if it was as soft as it appeared. I love festivals. Okay, so maybe it wasn't spending the day with him that had her so happy, but it didn't stop him from being thrilled at the idea of hanging with her for the next few hours, of maybe scoring a few more smiles and soft touches, especially when tomorrow morning they would be flying home and their weekend would be over. That would mean it might be like 2 weeks before he saw her again. That would completely suck. His chest felt heavy from the thought. She did that thing again with her hair, pulling it up and letting it fall on her shoulders. He studied her profile, a small nose, full lips that looked soft and always shiny, large brown eyes, slightly slanted, with thick dark lashes. He tucked his hands into his jeans pockets and tried to push the tug on his emotions away. While Chase really liked girls, he hated thinking of himself as one of those guys who got all sappy-eyed and started tossing around the L word. But for the life of him, it felt as if it was where he was heading, and he wasn't sure he could stop it. He glanced back at Tommy, who was still smiling, still the most beautiful thing he'd ever laid eyes on. He wasn't sure he wanted to stop it. November 1, 8 a.m. Breaking news. Update. An emergency crew has decided to brave the weather and embark on a rescue mission, hoping to find survivors of the wreckage of the Cessna 210 carrying Dr. Tolman and 4 other passengers. Despite the deteriorating weather conditions, the emergency rescue crew is gathering supplies and is expected to depart on the rescue mission in the next few hours. Dr. Tolman's plane fell off radar 20 minutes after leaving Jasper Regional Airport yesterday at 4 p.m. There are 5 people out there who could be alive, says Search and Rescue SAR volunteer Tom Phillips. 3 are just teenagers. If they are alive, I'm sure they are desperate for help. If they are not, we need to bring closure to the families. It only seems right that we try to get to them as soon as possible. Sheriff Ted Carter released this in his latest statement. While 2 SAR helicopters have flown over the wreckage this morning, visibility is still low, and unfortunately, no signs of life have been reported. Tom Phillips also told the media, while under normal weather conditions, the hike up the Jasper Range could take up to 3 hours, with these weather conditions, it could take twice as long. Family and friends of the Tolmans flew in last night after being notified that the plane went missing. I want to know my daughter is still alive. I have to believe she is, says Kerry Collins, father of 15-year-old Tommy Collins. The Faith Tabernacle Church in Jasper has opened its doors to the family and is holding an open service for any of the townspeople who would like to stop in and pray for the Tolman family and Tommy Collins' safe return. October 31, 11 a.m. Chase's parents dropped them off at the corner of First Street and Walnut Avenue, with instructions to meet them back at the same corner in 4 hours. The first thing Mindy wanted to do was go to the square, where the biggest crowd hung out to listen to the band play. Chase's stomach had other plans, and he would have loved to have snagged a hot dog from one of the concession stands. They'd passed at least 3, and the smell had called his name. All the blood they'd drawn for the study was probably increasing his appetite, he thought, but he didn't argue with Mindy. Didn't argue even when he knew it wasn't the music that Mindy wanted. She wanted to find Eric. The thought hit then that his parents had expected him to watch out for his sister. And he knew his parents would say that meant keeping her away from 16-year-olds who leered at her. Then again, weren't his parents being a tad ridiculous about the whole no dating until 16 rule? Gosh, most of the girls in his class were already dating. They walked the town square, snaking through the crowds, separating groups of friends, Mindy in the front and leading at a breakneck pace. She accidentally bumped into a guy wearing a black robe with a knife sticking out of his chest. And his sister, so intent in her search for a certain blonde dude, didn't even notice. There must have been a costume contest happening because a good third of the attendees were dressed like creatures of the dark. Chase offered an apologetic shrug when Mindy stormed through a group of friends, some sporting pale skin and fake fangs, others wearing werewolf masks. You didn't want to piss off a park full of werewolves or vampires. Once or twice, he glanced at Tommy at his side, and she just shrugged, as if she'd realized how crazed his sister was as well. They'd made 3 or 4 treks, he'd lost count, around the square, without one glimpse of the chest-gawking Eric. After the third time walking through the same group of creatures who were looking pissed at his sister's lack of manners, Chase finally took her by the arm and tried to get her to see reason. "Mindy, he's not here. Let's go grab something to eat." She frowned, obviously unhappy, and looked about ready to toss some ugly insult his way. But he kind of understood that she wasn't as upset at him as she was disappointed at being stood up by the guy she had a major crush on. He remembered hearing the jerk tell Mindy several times that he'd be at the festival and for her to please show up and find him. "We can come back later and see if he's here," Chase offered, noting the hurt in her eyes, hurt that he recognized as rejection, sort of how he'd felt when Susie Muller had told him he didn't know how to kiss. "I'm kind of hungry too," Tommy said, moving in beside him, chasing all thoughts of Susie from his mind. The warmth of Tommy's shoulder against his had him wondering if the brush was accidental or if maybe, just maybe, she liked touching him as much as he liked her touching him. "Fine," his sister said, but the pain in her expression and her rejected posture had him forgetting about Tommy for a second and disliking Eric even more. If the guy stood his sister up, he'd better not show his ugly face back at the cabin before they left tomorrow because Chase would tell him what he thought. Then he might get Baxter after his butt. They all ordered hot dogs, 2 for him and 1 for each of the girls, with extra mustard and 1 order of nachos. Since his dad had slipped Chase 3 20s before getting out of the car, he picked up the bill. He kind of liked paying for Tommy. It made it almost feel like a date. Of course, if it were a date, she might be holding his hand and he might be trying to figure out how to sneak a kiss. But not wanting to be disappointed, he tried not to think about it too much. They sat at an empty picnic table set out for the festival. Tommy, who'd borrowed Mindy's phone because hers had lost juice, was trying to call her parents, but for some reason couldn't get the call to go through. He studied her under his lashes, noticing little things, like the shape of her lips or the way she messed with her hair. "We must have a bad connection here," she said, and set the phone down. She had chosen to sit beside him and not beside Mindy. Was he overreading her every move, or was it possible she had a thing for him too? A group of vampires, several of the ones they'd charged past in their search for Eric, sat at the picnic table next to them. Mindy, as if seeing them for the first time, stared and then shuddered. She leaned down and spoke in a whisper. "They're freaky, don't you think?" Chase looked at the group of teens. They must have lost their werewolf friends because these were all dressed in black, probably doused with some kind of white powder to make them appear extra pale, and wore fake fangs. One of the guys had a few drops of fake blood running down his chin, and one girl had what looked like bite marks on her neck. "There has to be some costume contest going on," Chase said. Not that these guys were going to win, Chase thought. Did you see that zombie with the skin hanging off his face? He almost looked real. "They're still freaky," Mindy said, and cut her eyes back to the table of vampires. "You've been reading too many novels," Chase said, and took his first bite of hot dog. The spicy mustard filled his taste buds and reminded him how hungry he really was. But even starved, he stopped himself from poking the whole thing in his mouth the way he might have done if he was just with his guy friends. "No," Mindy said, and scooped up a chip dripping with cheese and sliced jalapenos. "It's not the books. I've been reading too many of Dad's reports." Chase picked up his soda. "Reports?" "His medical reports," she said. "I went by his work a couple of weeks ago, and he was with a patient, so I went and waited for him in his office." She leaned in and spoke quietly. There was a file open on his desk, and it was about some virus that made people crave blood. Human blood. Tommy almost choked on a nacho. "So you're saying that vampires actually exist?" "No, I didn't say that," Mindy said. "I'm saying a virus exists that makes people crazy and they want to drink blood. You can call it anything you want." Chase chuckled. "I think you just read it wrong." "I didn't," Mindy said. "I mean, maybe it was about one of his patients in the loony house, but Dad's a nephrologist, meaning a kidney doctor, not a shrink." "His patients aren't in the loony house." Mindy took a big sip of her drink and rolled her eyes at Chase's disbelief. "Hey, I'm just telling you what I read." "To be fair," Tommy said, "crazy people could have bad kidneys. I don't think kidney disease is prejudiced against the mentally unstable." Chase chuckled and studied the girl's sassy smile. That's part of what he liked about Tommy. She said some of the most unexpected things. I guess they could, he admitted. Tommy picked up a chip, and Chase realized how great it was just being here, with her, watching her eat. He bet he could watch her clip her toenails and be happy. You know, Tommy said, I heard once that there are bars that actually cater to people who want to drink blood. Yuck, what kind of person would drink blood? The kind that's really thirsty, a dark voice said at the end of the table. They all turned to the voice. Eric stood there, tall, but not as tall as Chase, and blonde. His sister stared up at him with some kind of love-struck grin. Anyone ever tell you that you look like Josh Holloway? His sister asked. Yeah, all the time. Eric grinned. I'm lost. You want to find me? What? That was so lame. But Mindy smiled. Chase sneaked a peek at Tommy, and while she did seem to be admiring the guy, she didn't look nearly as taken as his sister. Perhaps she preferred dark-haired guys over blondes. He could hope. So you made it, Eric said, his gaze locked on Mindy. I told you I would, his sister said, a goofy smile still plastered on her face. Holy crap, he hoped he didn't smile at Tommy that way. Eric looked over at the other table and called out a greeting to a couple of the vampires eating pizza. Then he looked back at their table and finally acknowledged Chase and Tommy. Chase nodded a hello. Picking up his hot dog, he tried to push away his aversion for the guy. Like it or not, it appeared as if they would be spending the rest of the afternoon with him. But when he looked back and found Eric staring at his sister as if he'd found a present and was ready to unwrap it, Chase wasn't sure he could push his dislike or his distrust of the guy aside. That was okay. He'd just have to pretend. But one thing was for sure, he wasn't going to let Eric get his sister alone. Something about this guy just smelled like trouble. Chase didn't like trouble. Sit down and join us, Mindy said, and scooted over, patting the bench seat next to her. Eric didn't hesitate to take the invitation, only the jerk took the invitation a little too far. Hell, Chase didn't think you could get a piece of sock lint between the dude and his sister. Chase shot the guy a frown, hoping he'd get the message, but he obviously didn't understand, because he proceeded to put his arm around Mindy, letting his hand dangle down her shoulder, practically touching her right breast. Thankfully, even Mindy seemed to not like it, because she leaned forward to snag another nacho, displacing his hand from her shoulder. Not wanting to call the guy out just yet, but very close, Chase focused on eating his hot dog. But not happy, he forgot his manners and shoved the rest of the bun and meat into his mouth. You want something to eat? Mindy asked Eric, pulling the nachos toward him. Yeah, I'm starved, the guy said. But he didn't partake in the nachos. Instead, he looked across the table. You gonna eat that hot dog? He asked Chase. With his mouth full, he didn't answer before Mindy said, Oh, he's done. He already had one. Before he knew what she planned to do, she popped up and stole Chase's second hot dog and dropped it in front of Eric. Chase chewed the bun and meat in his mouth with a little more gusto and stared at his sister. She glared back. Eric never seemed to notice the glaring match. Before Chase could swallow and claim dibs on his lunch, the creep picked up the hot dog and practically pushed the whole very thing in his mouth. The guy's cheeks puffed out. Oh yeah, Chase thought, realizing why big bites looked disgusting. The Gawker hot dog stealer now had a little mustard oozing from his lips, and with his cheeks stretched out like a chipmunk, he probably couldn't even feel it. Are you ready to go have our palms read? Tommy asked, as if sensing the tension. Palms read? Eric said, his mouth still full as he made a face. That's stupid. Chase leaned forward. Then I guess we'll see you later. Come on, Mindy, he said. And when he heard his tone, he realized he sounded a bit like his dad, deep and serious. Tommy stood up as if she completely understood and agreed with Chase's plan. Then she picked up Mindy's phone and dropped it in her pocket. You ready? She asked Mindy. Mindy, however, didn't answer Tommy. She'd gone back to her favorite pastime of glaring at Chase. Hey, I think it's stupid, Eric said, still talking around Chase's hot dog, but I'll go along for the laughs. Good. Mindy cut another cold look at Chase, as if warning him not to come between her and the boy she obviously thought was going to be her Prince Charming. Not that there was one thing charming about the guy. Chase almost spoke up right then and told the guy to take a hike or go hang out with his vampire buds. But another glance at Mindy's tight-lipped, squinty-eyed glare, and he knew she would raise all kinds of hell. He didn't want Tommy to get mixed up in their sibling rivalry. So he shut his mouth, snagged his soda cup, and stood up. The hot dog thief could come, but Chase wasn't going to take his eyes off him. Stealing a hot dog was one thing, but if he tried anything with Mindy, he'd have more than Chase's eyes on him. Chase had never started a fight, but he'd finished several. People always thought bullies picked on the little guys, and they did, but being big had made him a target of some of the bullies who wanted to claim they'd taken out the tallest kid in class. Unfortunately, it hadn't worked out for them. Chase summed up Eric. Probably 16, he had a wide set of shoulders on him, and probably a tad more muscle. Chase didn't care if the guy was older or if he was built like a brick house. If he stepped out of line one more time, he'd put him in his place. "I'm kind of scared," Tommy said later while standing beside the palm reader. "You go first." She shot Chase a sweet but vulnerable smile. He was hit again by how pretty she was. Her father was American, but her mom was Hawaiian, and she had the perfect blend. Her skin tone was just a tad olive, and her hair a couple shades lighter than black, and her eyes dark brown. He couldn't actually say she was his type. He didn't know if he actually had a type. But Susie Muller had also been brunette with dark eyes. Not that Susie held a candle to Tommy. "Do you mind going first?" Tommy asked, making Chase realize he'd just been standing there staring at her like an idiot, probably even had that goofy smile on his face, too. "No, that's fine." The palm reader sat at a table with a black tablecloth, her hands folded on top. A sign on the table read, "Caution, I will tell the truth, no matter how good or bad." She had jet black hair, coal black eyes, and she was dressed in bright orange. She reminded Chase of a gypsy, and maybe she was. "Just two of you?" the woman asked. "Yes," Chase answered. Because Eric thought it was stupid, Mindy had decided against getting her palm read. He could tell Tommy wanted company getting hers read, and if it made her happy, he didn't really mind. He didn't believe in it, but for Tommy, he'd do it. Chase pulled out a 20 to pay for their reading. "I can pay for mine," Tommy said. "My dad gave me money." "And your dad hasn't let me pay for anything." "Don't worry about it," Chase said, and was thankful his dad had given him ample cash. As he stuffed the change back in his jeans pocket, he caught his eyes around again to check on Mindy. When he didn't see them, his heart shot into his throat. Gosh, had he let the jerk get Mindy off by herself? But another sweep around and he spotted them. They stood about 10 feet away chatting. As they'd walked here, he'd seen Eric try to put his arm around her, and she'd pulled back a bit and took his hand instead. He liked knowing that Mindy was no fool. She might like the jerk and didn't mind him holding her hand, but she wasn't going to take any mess from him either. Glancing back at the palm reader, the woman motioned for him to sit down. He dropped in the empty chair across from her. She motioned with her fingers for him to give her his hand. He stretched out his hand on the table. The woman reached over and slipped her palm under the back of his hand. Her fingers were warm, almost hot. For some odd reason, he recalled the lab tech with the icy touch who'd taken his blood this morning. And for 1 second, he remembered he'd wanted to ask his dad about what kind of study it was. His thoughts stopped when the woman, still holding his hand, shifted in her chair. It made a spooky creaking noise, and he wondered if she'd purposefully used a chair that groaned for effect. The woman stared down and slowly ran her thumb across his palm. Her eyes widened suddenly, and she jerked her gaze up and stared at him, right at his forehead. She gasped slightly, as if she could see something in his head. "What?" he asked. "Nothing." She looked back at his palm and studied it for several long, silent seconds. Was she making up some crap? Hadn't she practiced this before? "Come on, just tell me I'll live a happy life and collect your money." "What do you see?" Tommy asked, as if too excited to wait. She paused. "I see that you will have amazing powers, but if you use them for good or evil is yet to be known." "That's kind of ominous," Tommy said. The woman looked up at Tommy. "The future can always be a little frightening. Then she looked back down, and after touching his wrist with her other hand, she traced a line over his palm, only halfway across his hand. You will come to many forks in life's path, some sooner than others, some more painful than others. You will have to want to survive. Never, her voice grew deeper, never turn your back on a challenge. Fight for the right to live. Chase frowned. The woman was a lunatic. She was talking mumbo-jumbo, but for some reason her words gave him chills. He pulled his hand away. Fine. Glancing toward Mindy to make sure she hadn't disappeared, he then looked back at Tommy. You still want to do this? He asked her, not sure he liked the stuff he'd heard, and not sure Tommy's fortune would be any better. You've paid for it, the palm reader said, as if there were no refunds. Yeah, Tommy said. I guess I shouldn't turn my back on a challenge either. She chuckled, sounding a little nervous. Chase stood up and moved the chair out a few inches, making it easy for Tommy to get seated. Before he could move his hand, she sat down and her long dark hair slipped over the back of his hand. His breath almost caught at how soft it felt. He wished he could leave his hand there, enjoy the silky feel of her long strands against his knuckles. Yet suddenly afraid his touch wasn't wanted, he pulled his hand away. The woman leaned in and slipped her hand under Tommy's. Like with him, Chase saw the palm reader's eyes widen, and he heard her gasp. Okay, so that was how she played it. She pretended as if everyone's palm told bad things. But then she pulled her hand out from under Tommy's. I'm sorry, I realize it was rude what I said earlier. If you would like your money back, I'm fine with a refund. Thanks to a slight decrease in snowfall, the three teams making their way to the crash site of the Cessna 210 that was flown by Dr. Edward Tallman and carrying 4 other passengers is reportedly making good time. The team leader radioed that they have hopes of arriving on the mountain ledge in less than 2 hours. With the temperatures dropping into single digits, paramedics worry that the weather conditions alone could present a significant risk to any survivors. It is unclear if Dr. Tallman and passengers have survival training for extreme weather conditions. Local medical teams are on standby to treat any survivors. Yet with each hour that passes, hope of finding the Tallmans and Miss Collins alive diminishes. In spite of the dire situation, family and friends of the victims remain hopeful. I know Edward, said a close friend of Dr. Tallman. He's a doctor, for God's sake. If at all possible, he's doing everything he can to keep his family safe. Tommy looked confused. A refund? No, she said, a little hesitant, obviously finding the woman's behavior as odd as Chase did. I want you to finish. At least I think I do, she muttered, then glanced back at Chase. He didn't say anything because he didn't think it should be his call, but he secretly hoped Tommy said no. He hadn't liked the good or evil crap the woman said about him, and he suspected he wouldn't like what she said about Tommy. Are you sure? The gypsy asked again, putting Chase on high alert. Yes, Tommy said, now sounding determined. She nodded and reached for Tommy's hand again. She traced a line on Tommy's palm and stopped only 1/4 of an inch in. Then, blinking, she glanced away, as if to ponder some thought. Chase saw her stare at her sign for several long seconds. She closed her eyes. She inhaled, her chest rising, then she let out the air slowly. When she opened her eyes, she looked up at Tommy and adjusted her shoulders. You will have a good life. 2 children, a boy and a girl. Chase stared at the woman, thinking her whole tone and demeanor had changed. And from the frown on Tommy's lips, he wasn't the only one who'd noticed it. Tommy tilted her head to the side and studied the woman. Why do I think you're lying? The palm reader stiffened. She put her hand over her chest. Her large ruby ring caught the sunlight and flickered. I speak from my heart. But does your heart tell the truth? Tommy asked. She raised her chin, her mouth thinned. I have read your fortune. Now be gone with you and let me find other customers. What are you not telling me? Tommy asked, sounding frightened. Chase wanted to reach over and touch her shoulder, but didn't know if she would welcome it. Then he thought, what the hell? He put his hand on her shoulder. Let's just go, he said. Am I going to die or something? Tommy asked the woman. The woman's eyes became cold, distant.
We are all going to die. She glanced out at the crowd. See her? She's going to die. The woman motioned to the right. That boy there, he's going to die. There is no one safe from death. Tommy, frowning, stood up and stared down at the woman. You really suck at this. Just be on your way. Go. She shooed them away like mosquitoes. Come on. Chase touched Tommy's elbow. As they stepped a few feet away, Tommy stopped and looked up at him. Am I crazy? Didn't you think she was lying too? Chase chose his words carefully. I think she's nothing but an old biddy who doesn't know a thing. Tommy left and then sobered. I don't think I'll ever have my palm read again. Me either, Chase said. Tommy made a face. I mean, all she tells me is that we're all going to die someday. Talk about obvious. Hey, it was better than I got. I might grow up to be evil. She might as well have said I'd be a serial killer or something. Oh, and I might or might not die. If I turn my back on a challenge, I'm gonna be a goner. Tommy laughed. You're right, she was just a crazy old lady, wasn't she? She leaned in and bumped his shoulder with hers. A nice bump, like he was more than just her best friend's little brother. Yeah, he said, and not sure if it was accidental, he shifted a little away so as not to crowd her, but he couldn't smile. Tommy looked around. Oh, crap. What? He asked. Where's Mindy and that creep? Gosh, for 2 minutes he'd forgotten about her. Chase's smile vanished, and he turned to look where he'd last seen them. They were gone. Gone. Oh, gosh, he didn't trust Eric, and even less now that he knew Tommy considered him a creep, too. I'll call her. Grabbing his phone, he dialed his sister's number. It rang. In Tommy's pocket.
Oh, Tommy said, and pulled out the phone. I'm sorry. She handed it to me and Chase tried not to panic. Mindy had to be around. Had to. I'm sorry, Tommy said again. It's not your fault. Let's just find her. 10 minutes later, he and Tommy had covered 3 streets and hadn't found his sister. Sometimes she makes me so mad, Chase muttered. Tommy sighed. My brother used to make me mad too. Chase ran through the Tommy data he had logged away in his brain. He didn't recall ever hearing about her brother. But, and now you two get along? He asked. He died, Tommy said. I'm sorry, I didn't know. He paused, not sure he should ask, but he wanted to know. He cared. What happened? Leukemia. It was almost 4 years ago, but I still miss him. Man, that sucks, Chase said. I mean, Mindy drives me crazy sometimes, but I can't imagine not having her around. Yeah. After a few long moments, Tommy suggested they go back to where the palm reader was in case Mindy was looking for them too. Not having a better idea, Chase agreed. But if Mindy wasn't there, he was calling his dad. He didn't know if it was the crazy palm reader's negative vibe playing with his mind, but he got a bad feeling. A feeling as if something really terrible was coming. As if to punctuate his point, a cold wind rolled past. As they hurried back to where they'd last seen Mindy, he noticed Tommy pulling her jacket tighter too. You want my coat? He stopped and started pulling his off. No, I just need to zip mine. But thanks, that's nice. Her smile was so sweet, his chest hurt. All he could think about was how she must have felt losing her brother. He wanted to hug her. You're nice, she said, as if wanting to clarify what she'd said. If he wasn't so worried about his sister, he would have liked to have savored the compliment. But no, his sister had done something stupid, and he couldn't take the time to savor. They continued walking. Chase set the pace fast, but Tommy kept up. They finally got back to the area where the different street vendors had set up shop. Still walking toward the palm raiders area, Chase heard someone call his name. His gut unclenched when he recognized Mindy's voice. He swung around, saw her hurrying toward them, and for 1 second, he understood his mom's saying she used when they'd arrive home a little late. I don't know whether to hug or hit you. Where did you go? Mindy asked, stopping in front of them and looking indignant. Where did I go? He asked, and now that he wasn't so worried, his anger rose. I went looking for you. You disappeared. Very it. Dad told us to stay together. Offering him her tight-lipped frown, she cut her eyes to Eric, who stood beside her, as if telling him to shut his trap in front of her new boyfriend. "We just went to grab a soda. I thought we'd be back before you two finished getting your futures told." "Here," Tommy said, and dropped Mindy's phone in her hands. "We were extra concerned because we realized I goofed and took your phone, and we wouldn't be able to contact you." That wasn't the only reason Chase was concerned, he thought. He was worried because his sister had decided to hang out with a guy who kept looking at her as if she was candy and he needed a sugar high. "I don't need anyone worrying about me," Mindy said, sounding annoyed at Tommy. "We all need someone to worry about us," Tommy said, sounding annoyed right back. Silence descended. Angry silence. Two girls mad at each other kind of silence. Finally, Mindy spoke up. "Let's go and get in line for the haunted house. I heard someone say it was great." She swung around on the heels of her shoes and started walking down the street. Eric followed her, but instead of looking where he was going, he did nothing but stare at her. "I don't like that guy," Chase growled close to Tommy's ear. "Me either," she said. "But let's do the haunted house, and then I'll claim I started my period and we have to go home." Chase nearly choked on his next breath. It was a good idea, but did she have to mention her period? What was that acronym Mindy tossed around for things like this? Oh yeah, TMI. That was totally too much information. Tommy's chuckle came close to Chase's ear, and he looked at her. "What?" he asked, not understanding the humor dancing in her eyes. "Sorry, I keep forgetting guys can't handle hearing stuff like that." "No, I'm fine," he lied. "Then why are you so red?" She moved a little closer, her soft shoulder lightly whispering against his bicep, back and then forth with each step. The warmth from that light touch made his heart skip a beat. This time he didn't shift away. He might have moved a tiny bit closer. Even though he was still mad enough to chew nails and spit out staples at his sister and her new boyfriend, this would go down as one of the best days of his life, which, according to the palm reader, might not be too long. Never turn your back on a challenge. Well, Tommy was one challenge he wasn't going to turn away from. Complete darkness descended upon them. It took a second for Chase's eyes to adjust. The first thing he did was make sure his sister and the jerk were right ahead. They were. Without warning, a vampire, blood dripping from his fangs, pounced at them. Tommy screamed, grabbed his arm, and plastered herself to his side. Haunted houses had never done much for Chase, but after feeling Tommy's body so close to his, he wondered if he could find one in Houston that ran all year long. He'd love to bring Tommy to it at least once a week. Next, a guy with a chainsaw came after them. It wasn't a real chainsaw, but it sure as heck sounded like one. Tommy held on tighter. Yep, he'd just become a haunted house fan for life. They followed the arrows, highlighting the way to walk. They dipped through a black curtain, and complete darkness swallowed them again. Chase blinked and tried to see Mindy, who he'd sworn had gone through the curtain seconds before. He couldn't make her out, but it could just be the light. He continued to follow the tiny blue lights past a coffin with a dead guy trying to grab them. Worried that he'd left his sister, he hurried Tommy through the next curtain. He squinted his eyes, forcing them to adjust. No Mindy. Then he heard it. A scream. Mindy's scream. It wasn't the fun kind of scream. "Stop it," she yelled. Gut instantly nodded. He grabbed Tommy so as not to lose her and followed the sound of his sister's voice. The sound led him straight toward a wall, but he discovered it was just a curtain. He swiped it back and ran inside, looking for a monster. One named Eric. The small room filled with technical equipment had just enough light to make out shapes. Then the shapes became more visible. Eric had Mindy against a wall, restraining her and trying to silence her screams. "There," Tommy yelled, but Chase already had the jerk by the collar. Wadding the jerk's shirt in his fist, Chase yanked him off his sister. "Whoa, stop," the guy screamed, holding up his hands. "I think that's what my sister said." He clenched his fist and heard Tommy consoling his sister. "It was a mix-up. I thought she was into it," Eric said. "Liar," a feminine voice yelled out from behind him. Not his sister, but Tommy. "Mindy might have been into it for a kiss, but she never invited you to touch her inappropriately. She said stop, you low-life creep." Eric stiffened, obviously not liking being called names by a girl. "All I did was touch her. She was asking for it." You're the one asking for it. Chase pulled back his fist and plowed it right into the guy's face, crashing against teeth and bone. It hurt like hell, but felt wonderful at the same time. The guy went down with a loud thump. "You broke my tooth," he bit out and started to get up. "Don't move." Chase took a step closer and glared down at him. "You get up, I'm gonna break your nose next time." Eric stayed down, obviously hearing the truth in Chase's voice. Chase turned to his sister, still sniffling and wiping her eyes. "Somebody call the cops." "No," Mindy said. "I'm okay. Thanks to you, he didn't get anywhere. I just want to go home." Please, please just get me home. His gut told him he needed to report this, but the pleading in his sister's voice had him just wanting to make it easier on her. Fine. Chase turned back to the piece of gosh on the floor and pointed a finger at him. "If I see you before I leave, I'm gonna hit you again. And I swear, when I'm done, you'll have so much blood on you that you'll put that vampire to shame. So you'd better not go back to your cabin tonight." November 1, 2 p.m. Newsflash. Update search and rescue volunteer hurt trying to reach plane crash. One of the rescue members with Search and Rescue, SAR, has fallen down a 30-foot embankment while trying to reach the crash site of the Cessna 210, the plane that went down last night in the Jasper Mountain Range, carrying 4 passengers and 1 pilot. 2 emergency crew members carried the man to the site, where an emergency helicopter is meeting them to transport the man to the local hospital. While the injuries are not life-threatening, initial reports state that he suffered a broken leg and collarbone. Tom Phillips, a volunteer with SAR, who is more familiar with the Jasper Mountain Range, is busy trying to find a new and safer route to get to the wreckage. Meanwhile, temperatures continue to drop, making the conditions even more dangerous for any potential survivors, as well as the team trying to reach them. October 31, 2:15 p.m. They stormed out of the haunted house, and Chase continued to rush them forward. He didn't want to chance meeting Eric again. He might just have to kill him. And he wanted to get Mindy somewhere quiet so he could make sure she was okay. They made it almost a block to where a long picnic table sat in front of a concession stand. He motioned to the table, thinking Mindy might need to sit down. As soon as he got there, he turned to her. "Are you sure you're okay? If he hurt you, I'll go back and find him and break his freaking neck." "No," Mindy said, still standing, but her voice shook a little. "He didn't do anything, but make me feel violated. I'm fine." "Gosh," Tammy said. "Look at your hand, Chase. You're bleeding and your knuckles are swelling." She caught his hand and held it. "You need some ice. I'll go get some." She took off, and Chase turned back to his sister. "I'm sorry it took me so long to find you." "Oh gosh, Chase, it wasn't your fault. I was stupid," she said, her voice wavering a little less. "I went with him behind the curtain, thinking all he'd do was kiss me, but—" she hesitated. "Please don't tell Mom or Dad. I mean, it's not like something really happened. He didn't even get inside my shirt. I was just so upset that I fell for him, and that I couldn't stop him. He was stronger than I was." She bit down on her lip. "Please, please don't tell. You know this would freak them out. And Dad, gosh, Dad would kill him." Yeah, his dad probably would kill him. Chase knew he wanted to. "Are you sure you're okay?" She took a few steps closer. "Thanks to you, I am. And I've been so mean to you today. I'm sorry, I was a difficult person. I promise you that I'll never be a snot to you again." Seeing Mindy acting like Mindy, the nicer Mindy, had the panic in his chest lessening. Unfortunately, the panic was probably what had stopped his hand from hurting, because it was throbbing intensely now. Before he knew what Mindy intended to do, she hugged him. They hadn't hugged each other since his mom stopped making them hug to make up after a fight. Oddly, this one was nicer. He really did love his sister, even when she was a snot. "Thank you," she said, and pulled back. She looked around him. "Here comes Tammy with the ice." She glanced down at his hand. "I'm sorry you got hurt." "I'm fine," he lied. She made a face, looking from Tammy back to him. "Look,
I know you have a thing for Tammy, and if you tell her I said this, I'll lie and say I didn't, but she looked up again. She kind of has a thing for you too. I didn't approve, but after seeing you two today, I think you might be great together. So go for it. You have my permission to date my best friend, but be nice to her. Chase's head reeled with that piece of information. Here, Tammy came running up with a cup of ice and some paper towels. They didn't have any plastic baggies, so this will have to do. She pulled him over to the picnic table. Sit down and let me put ice on it. He sat down on the bench facing her instead of the table. She stepped between his legs and quickly started emptying ice into the paper towels. I'm fine. It doesn't hurt at all. It wasn't a lie this time. Hearing that Tammy had a thing for him chased the pain away. She picked up his hand and dropped the paper towel filled with ice on his hand. You were awesome, she said. In the corner of his eye, he saw his sister move a few feet away as if giving them space. He glanced up at Tammy. Not really. I should have chased him off a long time ago. Mindy wouldn't have let you. Besides, I never thought watching a guy fight would be hot, but it was. You think I'm hot? He asked, loving the sound of that. She grinned. I think you're a hero. So I'm not hot? She laughed. You're both. She dipped her head and kissed him. It was much more than a simple peck, and it didn't end quickly. It lasted, not long enough, but long enough for it to mean something. When she pulled back, he looked up at her. Are you only kissing me because I hit Eric? Because I don't want to have to hit a guy every time I want to score a kiss. He smiled at her, his heart still racing from feeling her lips against his. No, she said, grinning from ear to ear. I've wanted to kiss you for a long time. And, she made a funny face, since I'm gonna die soon, I figured I'd better do it. In that case, do you think you should do it again? It was a lame line, but it worked. She kissed him again. He was nervous at first, but just like he thought, he wasn't bad at it. He suddenly felt confident. He even reached up with his uninjured hand and held the back of her head. The sound of a ringing phone broke the kiss. His sister stood about 10 feet away, staring and smiling, as she pulled her phone out. When she looked at the phone's screen, her eyes widened with panic. She came running up. It's Dad. Please, please tell me you didn't call him about this. I didn't, he told her, and stood up. He's probably just checking in. She inhaled a breath and took the call. Hey, Dad, Mindy said, sounding extra cheery, but she really did sound okay. She paused. I hate that. Yeah, we were ready to come back anyway. She looked up at Chase. Okay, we'll meet you in 20 minutes. She dropped the phone back in her pocket. He's picking us up early. Something about a storm and a surgery he's been called in to do. We're going to have to leave this afternoon, like soon, because everyone is trying to get out of town before the storm. I hate that, Tammy said. Me too, Chase said. He wasn't ready for this weekend to end. He plopped the ice he'd been using on his knuckles on the table. He moved his hand. It wasn't broken, just bruised. Mindy stood there staring at him, looking worried again. Promise me you aren't going to tell Mom or Dad about this? Chase studied her frown. Promise me that you'll be more careful from now on and not hook up with jerks. I promise, Mindy said. Now you promise. I want to hear it. Chase shrugged. I already promised, but to make you feel better, I promise I won't tell Dad or Mom. His sister came over and hugged him again. I love happy endings, Tammy said. As they walked back to the place they were supposed to meet his dad, they passed the palm reader. She was with someone else, holding a man's palm in her hand, probably telling him lies. Then, as if the palm reader felt them, she glanced up. Her dark black eyes followed them, but it was her expression that concerned him more. It wasn't evil, not angry. It was sad. Chase looked away quickly, glad Tammy hadn't seen her. He didn't believe the woman. He didn't. But he gazed back one more time, and for some reason, he recalled what Tammy said. I love happy endings.
As they were walking back to meet his dad, Mindy claimed she needed to find a restroom. And because apparently girls never went to the bathroom alone, Tommy went with her. Chase sat down on a bench a half a block from the facilities. He sat there practically glowing, thinking about the 2 kisses and trying to decide what he needed to do next. And not just kiss her again. Oh, he was definitely going to do that. But wondering what a boy was supposed to do. Did he ask her to go out with him? Ask her to go to the movies with him? A thought hit that he didn't like. His parents had been so strict about Mindy not dating until 16. Would they feel the same way about him? Gosh, he didn't like that. And for once, he could really relate to his sister's feelings. A few minutes passed. His hand throbbed a bit along with the concern about his parents. Remembering Eric could still be around and might be stupid enough to try something, he stood up and walked toward the bathrooms, wanting to be there when they walked out. 2 girls came out of the facility, but it wasn't Tommy and his sister. He stood in the same spot, scuffing his shoe on the pavement, watching the exit to the girls' restroom, trying not to worry. Chicks always took forever in the bathroom. When another 5 minutes passed, he started pacing. If they didn't come out soon, he was going in. His face heated thinking about walking into a girl's restroom, but hey, Tommy called out. He spun around and saw them walking toward him. "I thought you were in the bathroom," he said, sounding a little annoyed. He instantly regretted his tone, but figured he had a right. He'd been worried. "I saw something I wanted to buy," Tommy said, and moved in close to him. "I saw it when I went to get the ice earlier." He almost said they should have told him, but bit back the words. He didn't want Tommy to think he was too controlling. "Do you want it now or later?" He paused a second. "It's for me?" "Yeah," she said, as if he should have figured it out. He suddenly felt bad. He hadn't bought her anything. Not that he'd really had a chance, but "I say you open it now." Tommy beamed and handed him a plastic bag. "Yeah, open it now," Mindy said, putting her 2 cents in. "You'll like it." Chase looked from Mindy to Tommy. "But I didn't get you." "Don't be silly, open it. It's just a little thing. It's not even really for you, but, well, sort of." Chase pulled a leather dog collar from the bag. "It's for Baxter," Tommy said, "but read what it says." "I saw it when I was waiting for them to get ice for your hand. They had them hanging from a display case." Chase turned the dog collar around and read the inscription. "Never turn your back on a challenge." "Crazy, isn't it?" Tommy said. "It's the same thing the fortune teller said." "Yeah," Chase agreed, rubbing his finger on the soft leather. Tommy made a face. "I'll bet the crazy lady saw it earlier and just used it. But it's not a bad saying, and I know how much Baxter means to you." "He does, and I like the collar, thank you." "And Baxter will thank you." She lifted up on her tiptoes. Her lips came so close to his that he could feel her soft breath. He also felt her soft breasts against his chest, and that felt really, really good. "You're welcome," she said. Then she kissed him. Mindy chuckled. "I hate to rain on your parade, but you 2 don't have time to play kissy-kissy. We need to meet Dad." Chase frowned at his sister and tucked the collar in his coat pocket. Then, not turning his back on a challenge, he reached over and slipped his hand into Tommy's. It fit perfectly against his. His dad drove like a bat out of hell to get to the cabin. Supposedly, he'd heard about the incoming storm while skiing and had driven Chase's mom home to start packing. 5 minutes, he said as they walked into the cabin. "There's some talk that the storm could come in earlier, and I have to get home. I can't be delayed here." His dad tossed his coat on the sofa. "Amy, you packed and ready?" he called out to Chase's mom. "Almost," came her voice from the bedroom. "Go," his dad said to them. "I'm serious. Grab everything, drop it in your suitcases, and let's fly out of here. 4 minutes. If we're late, we'll be stuck waiting for several hours for runway time, and the storm could come in early." Mindy and Tommy took off to the room they shared. Chase turned to go to his. Then he realized something was wrong. Baxter hadn't met him at the door. Baxter always met him. "Where's Baxter?" Chase muttered, looking around and checking his pocket for the dog collar Tommy had given him. "Just get your bags packed," his dad said. Chase didn't want to annoy his dad off, but instead of going to his room, he darted past his dad to find his mom. She was rushing around the room, tossing their clothes into the open suitcase. "Where's Baxter, Mom?" he asked. His mom had just tossed a handful of clothes toward the bed, and she froze as if the question rolled around her head. She stood there for 1 second, and then her eyes widened with worry. Gosh! She ran out the bedroom door. "What?" Chase asked, running after her. I let him outside to potty and was standing out there watching. Then your dad called to tell me how soon we had to go, and I completely forgot him." She ran past his dad. "Are we packed?" his dad asked his mom. His mom ignored him and opened the back door and ran out on the porch. "Baxter," she called, "come here, boy." When the dog didn't come running, she took off down the porch. Chase followed and started calling his dog. "What is it?" his dad asked, stepping out on the back porch. "I let Baxter out and forgot about him." His mom ran from one side of the property to the other, calling the dog. Chase took off toward the woods, worried Baxter had chased a rabbit or something. The dog wasn't one to run off, but if a small animal showed up, he'd probably give chase on pure instinct. "Chase," his father called out, "you go pack. I'll see if I can find Baxter. You too." Chase wanted to argue that his dog was 10 times more important than packing, but he saw the expression on his dad's face and knew he meant business. As he walked back into the cabin, listening to his dad call out Baxter's name, Mindy ran right into him. "What's wrong? Is Baxter missing?" "Yeah," Chase said, frowning. "Gosh," Mindy said, "how did he get out?" "I did it." His mom stepped in behind him. "I'm so sorry, Chase," she said, guilt lacing her voice. While Baxter was the family pet, the black lab had picked Chase as his person the moment they'd brought him home from the shelter, where his previous owner had just dumped him off. It was an accident, Chase said, not wanting to blame his mom. He knew how much his mom loved Baxter, too. "You want us to go look for him, too?" Tommy asked, standing behind his sister. "Have you two finished packing yet?" his mom asked. "No," Mindy answered. "Then let's all hurry up and finish, and then we can look for him together." Chase sat in the back seat, his head reclined, his eyes closed. He simply could not believe his dad was doing this. Leaving Baxter? How could he leave Chase's dog? Every now and then, Tommy would brush her hand against his. It felt nice, and he would have liked it if he wasn't hurting so much inside, if he wasn't so very angry at his dad. Suddenly, feeling as if he would burst if he didn't try one more time to convince his dad, he lifted his head up. His dad's gaze, as if knowing Chase wasn't finished fighting the battle, shot to the rearview mirror and his eyes locked on Chase's. "Jimmy is going to find him, Chase," his dad said before Chase could say anything. "He told me he was going to look for him right after we hung up. He'll find him. You'd be amazed how good he is at finding things. And as soon as the storm is over, we'll have Baxter flown to Houston. Then let me stay and help this guy find him. I'll fly back with Baxter," Chase gritted out. "Please take me back and let me find my dog." "No, I'm not going to leave you here. There's a really bad storm coming, and I want to know my family is safe." "And what if they don't find Baxter before the storm comes in? You know your friend isn't going to look as hard as we would. He probably doesn't even like dogs. Please, let's not leave," Chase begged. "Let's all stay and find Baxter. He's part of this family." His dad's expression tightened. "Really, Dad? His first owners already abandoned him. He's going to think we did the same thing." Chase saw his dad's hands on the wheel tighten. "I have to get home, Chase. There's a surgery I can't miss." Every muscle in Chase's body clenched. Would it kill you to miss a day at work? Why is your very work more important than Baxter? Chase saw his father's eyes fill with a mixture of anger and empathy. Since it's a 12-year-old girl that's been waiting for a kidney for 4 years, and if she doesn't get this one, she probably won't make it for the next one. I've taken care of her since she was 8. I'm a part of the transplant team and the best nephrologist they've got. I'd like to be there to make sure she gets the best care she can." He inhaled. "Look, I know you care about Baxter. I care about him too. And I'm telling you, Jimmy will find him. Baxter is going to be fine." A part of Chase understood his dad's dilemma with the surgery, but he could still let Chase stay. "Ask this friend of yours if I can stay with him." His dad shook his head. I don't know Jimmy that well." Chase frowned. "If Baxter dies, I'll never forgive you." His mom turned around. "Chase, let's calm down. Your dad has complete faith in Jimmy. He's our best bet right now." Chase didn't want to calm down. He wanted to go back to the cabin. He wanted it so badly his gut churned. The emergency crew trying to reach the wreckage of the plane, flown by Dr. Edward Tallman with 4 passengers on board, has decided to try a different route due to the icy terrain. The crew reports that a new route has been mapped out and they hope to reach the wreckage within the hour. However, said Tom Phillips, search and rescue SAR volunteer, if this path isn't workable, we'll have to start back to make sure we can be back to safety before nightfall. Another SAR helicopter has flown over the site and reports no signs of life. Yet the town remains hopeful that when the team arrives at the crash site, this becomes a rescue mission and not just recovery. But either way, says Phillips, we have a job to do. More updates will be made when available. Trying not to think about the girl who needed surgery, Chase prayed that the airport would tell his dad that conditions were too bad to fly. When the rental car company dropped them off at the airport, he noticed the temperature had dropped steeply. But his prayer went unanswered. And now they were in the plane, about to fly out. His dad's phone rang. He looked back at Chase. I'll bet that's Jimmy with good news. Chase held his breath, hoping. Could he convince his dad to go back for the dog if they had found him? His dad took the call, but whatever he heard the caller say must not have been good news because he wasn't smiling. Okay, thanks. I know you will. He stuffed his phone back in his pocket and looked back at Chase with regret. Chase's gut clenched tighter. Had something bad already happened to Baxter? Jimmy hasn't found him yet, but he's still looking. He promised not to quit until he finds him. Chase slumped back in his seat and looked out the plane's window. A few snowflakes hit the glass pane. The 6-sided pattern stuck, glimmered in the sunlight, then melted, turning into a slow-moving speck of moisture. All Chase thought about was if Baxter was getting snowed on, or if he had gone back to the cabin and didn't understand why they were gone, just like the last family that had abandoned him. In a few minutes, his dad had permission to take off. Tammy reached over and touched his shoulder. My gut says this guy is going to find Baxter. I really think he will. Chase nodded and wished he could believe her. Wished he could concentrate and relive their kisses and ponder all of the possibilities for them in the future. There was a lot to think about there. But instead, the worry over Baxter weighed on his heart. Looking up at his dad, he saw him glance up at the sky. Picking up his radio, he called to confirm it was safe to take off. Chase held his breath, thinking this might be his lucky break. No such luck. His dad nodded, hung up, and told them all to turn their cell phones off. They were leaving. The storm was 5 hours away, his dad informed them. They would be safe. At least, that gave this Jimmy guys, someone his dad trusted with Baxter's life, but not Chase's, which was not a good sign, 5 hours to find Baxter. The plane took off with ease. The gray sky greeted them with a snowy mist. A few minutes later, Mindy put on her headphones and went into her music zone. But she met his eyes every now and then, and he knew she was worried about Baxter as well. The heavy silence in the plane matched Chase's mood. That mood plummeted deeper when a sudden jolt shook the plane. The unexpected jarring threw Chase against the cabin wall. "What's happening?" his mom asked, her voice heightened with panic. "Downdraft," his father gritted out as he fought to control the plane. But the small aircraft kept falling and being yanked up and down. The cabin filled with loud shrieks from his sister and Tammy. I got it," his dad yelled over their screams in an attempt to put everyone at ease. No ease came. The plane continued to fall. Fear swelled inside Chase as his dad fought the controls. The plane tilted at an angle. Tammy's shoulder came against his. She grabbed his hand, her grip amazingly tight. He gripped back, determined not to let go. "Watch out," his mom screamed again. "The mountain! The mountain!" Another jolt shook the plane. The wing must have clipped something. A loud crack, the shrill noise of metal being crunched, vibrated in Chase's ears. Behind that hideous noise, his mom called out, "I love you guys." That was the last thing Chase heard before everything went dark. Dark, as in complete blackness. Nothingness. And because he feared what was coming, he went there willingly. Chase was stuck, caught, trapped in the middle of something, of somewhere. The darkness started to fade. He saw light. He saw his family.
"Are you okay?" he yelled out, not understanding why he felt this raw sensation that something was wrong. Not that they looked wrong. Unlike him, they were in a tunnel of light. He didn't understand. Why were there when he was here, wherever here was? Worry, panic, terror. Emotions continued to swell inside him, and somehow he knew if he could get to his family, it would be okay. He would be okay, that he wouldn't be stuck anymore. He tried to move closer to them, but something held him back. No, it didn't just hold him back, it pulled him back. "No," he said, trying to free himself to go to them. His mom looked up. Her mouth moved, as if talking, but he couldn't hear her. Then she waved him back, as if telling him to go. Not that he had a choice. Whoever, whatever had him, kept moving him. His family was getting smaller and smaller. Why wouldn't his mom want him to come with them? He didn't want to be alone. In the distance, he heard barking. Baxter! Thinking of Baxter brought on another wave of unexplainable panic. Why was he worried about Baxter? He squinted to see his dog was with his family. It didn't seem like it, but they were so small now, maybe he just couldn't see. But the barking seemed to be closer than his parents and Mindy. He shifted his gaze looking for the dog. When he glanced back up at his family, they were nothing but tiny specks in the surrounding light. He could still hear the barking. "Baxter," he called, "where are you?" Then he remembered Baxter. Lost, and the storm was coming. His heart suddenly swelled with another memory. The plane, the crash. His heart pounded against his chest. Thump, thump, thump. The light disappeared. Or that light did.
Another light turned the inside of his eyelids red. He tried to open them, but they felt so heavy, crusty, as if something had glued them shut. Before he tried again, the pain hit. Pain in his arm, in his neck, his head. But amazingly, nothing else hurt. That's when it hit him. It didn't hurt because he couldn't feel anything. He couldn't feel anything below his chest, not his legs or his feet. Forcing his eyes open, bits of white fell toward him. Snow. A flake fell into his eye and he blinked it away. More raw panic gripped his chest. His parents? Mindy? Tammy? He swallowed. His throat barely worked. He tried to raise his head. It hurt, but he did it anyway. "Mom? Dad?" he called, but the sound barely came out. He blinked several times and tried to focus. All he could see was a mangled piece of metal that had once been a plane. The plane his dad loved. He called it Amy, named after his mom. "Mom?" he called again, and turned his head to see if he could spot anyone. He couldn't. But then he saw the snow around the mass of mangled metal. It was red, blood red. He remembered the light, seeing them in the bright tunnel. "No!" he screamed and tried to get up, but he couldn't move his legs. He dropped his head back in the pillow of snow. Hot tears rolled down his cheeks. A wave of dizziness hit, bringing the blackness back. He embraced it. Noise, Chase's mind registered it, metal scraping against metal. He saw the red again on the back of his eyelids and forced his eyes open. Snow caught on his eyelashes, or was it ice? His face felt almost frozen, sort of half numb. "Gosh, Tallman, this wasn't supposed to happen," the voice boomed out of nowhere. Chase used every bit of his energy to lift his head. He saw two men standing beside the red snow and plane wreckage. One wore a white coat, the other wore black, all black, black jeans and a black coat. "I should have never involved him in this," the man in white said, as if he was looking at, "Is he alive?" Chase tried to speak, but only air came out. Then again, he must have spoken, because the two men swung around as if he'd yelled the words. "One of them is alive," the man in white said. They both rushed closer, their footsteps crunching on the snow. One of them? Only one? They were dead. His dad, Mom, Mindy, and Tammy. He remembered the light. Had these men really said his family was dead? Chase let his head fall back down. No, he couldn't accept that. Couldn't believe they were gone. He fought to keep his eyes open, wanting to ask again, to beg them to be wrong, to save his family.
The two men appeared over him. He tried to open his mouth to speak, but nothing came out. Black spots, like fireworks, started popping off in his vision. He couldn't make out their faces, but he saw their shapes. Then he saw their eyes, glowing, bright lime green. What in the world was wrong with his vision? One of the men crouched down beside him, the snow crunching beneath the heels of his shoes. It was the guy in the lab coat. Chase couldn't make out his face, but he saw his eyes, still glowing, and the white coat. Gosh, the man said, looking up at the guy wearing black who stood over Chase. He's a carrier. Did we bring gloves? No, the other man said. The dizziness had Chase closing his eyes, but he listened. Their voices were distant, as if on a radio in another room. He tried to pick up his right arm, but couldn't. "We're here, kid," one of them said, and Chase felt his body shift slightly, as if someone was moving the snow from around him. Gosh, if I touch him, I risk activating the virus. He's in bad shape. He wouldn't be able to survive the turn. "I disagree," the deeper voice said. "It's his only chance to survive." "He's too weak. It'll kill him," the other voice argued. "Probably, but he's dying anyway. Turn him, and at least he has a chance. It might not be much of one, but it's the best shot he has." He was dying. He thought hearing it would have caused him to react. He didn't. He thought of the light tunnel where he'd seen his family. He wanted to go there. Chase opened his eyes to tell them it was okay. He couldn't speak, but he stared at the blurry figures. One of the men passed something to the other. Chase blinked the ice from his lashes and saw the man in the white lab coat holding a knife. Chase's heart thumped once in fear. Then he watched as the man turned the knife on himself. He put the knife to his palm and gripped it. Blood, one drop at a time, dripped from his clenched fist. Chase didn't react to it because somehow it didn't seem to matter. He was dying, and he was going to go to the light. As Chase stared, the guy dropped the knife in the snow. Then he pressed his bleeding palm to Chase's arm, to an open wound he had there. The touch wasn't nearly as warm as he thought it would be. Then, suddenly, it was. It was so warm it stung. Hot, he tried to say, but wasn't sure he'd managed it. A burning sensation started flowing inside him. He heard himself moan. "Come on, kid. Hang in there. I owe your dad that much." Chase choked on his next intake of air. "Gosh, don't you die on me? Die on me. Die on me. Die on me." The words echoed in his head, and he saw the light again. Peaceful, pure, bright, but somehow soft. It didn't hurt to look at it. As a matter of fact, it was beautiful. All of a sudden, his dad and mom appeared beside him. "No," his mom said. "Go back. Live, son," his dad said. "Live for us." "I don't want to," he said. I don't want to be alone." "Take him back, gosh," his father roared, staring back into the tunnel of light, as if someone else was there. "Please, it's not fair." Something started pulling him away again. "No," he begged. "I like it here." He stopped moving. He heard the bark again. Baxter. Turning in circles, he looked for his dog. "Come here, boy. Come here." "Chase?" The fine voice had him swinging back around. Tammy. She looked even more beautiful than he remembered. Her dark hair glistened with the light. Her smile lit up her face. Angelic. That's how he would describe her. She moved toward him, her presence so sweet her chest ached. All of a sudden, she looked back over her shoulder, as if someone called her. "It's my brother," she said when she turned around. "He's here, and he looks so good. He runs and can play ball like he loved to do before he got sick." Chase tried to look over her shoulder to see him, but he couldn't. He could only see her. He let his gaze fall back on her face, on her eyes that seemed honestly happy. But then her smile faded. "You have to go back, Chase. Don't you remember what she said?" "What? Who said?" "You can't turn your back on a challenge, Chase. That's what the palm reader said. I bought the dog collar with the saying on it, remember? It's in your pocket, in your jacket. You have to face this challenge." "No, I don't want to go back. I'd be alone. It would be unbearable." "You'll be sad for a while, but not forever. It's not like it will go away. You just learn to go on, and then you realize that life hasn't ended. I did it with my brother, and you'll do it too. Go, Chase. Go face the challenge." He shook his head. You were my challenge. She grinned. Are you kidding? I wasn't a challenge. You had me in the palm of your hand the first time I saw you playing baseball. You looked so good in the uniform. She glanced back again, as if she was being called. Go back. No, he said. She looked sad. Look, I don't know if I'm supposed to tell you this, but you can see things up here, glimpses of the future. And I know for a fact that you're going to be okay. You're going to meet someone. She laughed. You only thought I was a challenge. This other girl you'll meet is the real thing. She sighed. Ah, Chase, you have so much life to live, and you can do it. Don't turn away from it. She looked back one more time. I have to go. My brother is calling. She faded, disappeared right in front of him. The place where she'd stood held snowflakes and tiny pieces of frozen ice. Slowly, it all floated to the ground. I'm not going back, he muttered. November 1, 7 p.m.
Newsflash. Update. All 5 bodies have been recovered from the crash of the Cessna 210 in the Jasper Mountain Range. The search and rescue, SAR, found the last victim of the fatal crash among the charred remains of the Cessna 210. Family and friends of both the Tallmans and the Collinses are waiting for the bodies to be released from the morgue after autopsies so they can be taken back to Texas for burial. Tom Phillips, search and rescue volunteer, was quoted saying it was still too early to speculate as to what caused the crash, but weather could have played a part in the accident. Phillips added he could not imagine the heartbreak of the families involved. More updates will be made when available. October 31, 5 p.m. Chase started to walk farther into the tunnel of light. He didn't want to be alone. To be without his father, his mother, and Mindy. She was a nuisance, but he loved her. Then he heard it again. Baxter. His barking was even more persistent. He looked left, then right, called the dog's name. Go get Baxter, he heard his sister say. She stood next to him. Go, Chase, go. The dog continued to bark. He turned to look behind him, away from the light, and that's all it took. The power, some unknown power, pulled him back, all the way, back to the snow, back to the voices, the 2 strange men. Chase didn't open his eyes, didn't want to. He hurt everywhere. His head throbbed, his leg throbbed, his back ached like a Charlie horse. Now he could feel below his chest, but it hurt so bad he wished he couldn't. You can't turn your back on a challenge, Chase. He heard Tammy's voice in his head and remembered what she'd said about the dog collar. Slowly moving his arm, surprised he could, he found his pocket. With eyes still closed, his fingers curled around the gift Tammy had given him. He traced his thumb over the words cut out in the leather. Told you he would make it, someone said, as if they'd seen him move. I'll stay with him. You go get us a body. Chase's head throbbed. Surely he'd misunderstood. Don't you think they'll just believe he got thrown from the crash? Animals got to him? You're forgetting. I volunteered a time or 2 with the search and rescue team. They won't stop looking until they have the remains of all the victims. Besides, I've already called around. They have a body that fits our needs in the next county over. Well, put it under what's left of the fuel tank and light it, and they'll never know it wasn't him. Their words echoed in his head. Okay, he must be imagining things. Head injury, he thought. Then a pain hit, as if someone had a vice grip on his ribcage. It grew so intense that he screamed out. When it finally let go, he pulled Baxter's collar up to his chest and held on to it. Then he let out a breath and tried to slip back into nothingness. Chase smelled smoke. He felt cold, colder than even the ice he rested on. Fever. He had a fever. He wasn't sure how long he'd been out, 5 minutes or 5 hours. It didn't matter, he told himself. He wasn't sure anything mattered if what he believed about his parents, sister, and Tammy was true. He didn't know what hurt the most, his body or his heart. And then, suddenly, he did know. His heart. He'd lost his family, lost his dog, lost everyone. All of a sudden, he heard footsteps coming his way. Another pain started at the top of his neck and crawled down his spine. He arched his back and moaned.
Come on, boy, let's get out of here. Chase felt someone pick him up, as if he weighed nothing. He opened his eyes. "Put me down," he said, the words barely a whisper. "Sorry, son, we gotta go." "What about the tracks?" the other man asked. "Run some brush over them. With this weather, the team won't make it down here for another 12 to 15 hours. Chase was suddenly lifted from the ground, up like he was floating. No, like he was flying. He turned his head away from the man's chest who held him close. He was about 60 feet in the air, looking down at the plane crash. The last thing he saw before he passed out again was the smoke coming from part of the wreckage. November 7. Chase heard voices. He lifted his eyelids, not sure where he was. Raising his head off a pillow, he stared at the bedside table and saw the dog collar Tammy had given him. Memories started ping-ponging around his head. Tammy, the plane, the crash, the light, the two men. Grief swelled in his chest and threatened to drown him. Nothing but pride stopped him from curling up in a little ball and sobbing. Then, other vague flashes started filling his head. Time in this bed, in pain, fever. He'd had a high fever. He recalled the man, the one who'd worn the white lab coat, the one who'd showed up at the plane crash, sitting by his side. He could almost feel him now, running cold towels over him. His words had been calming, telling Chase that he would be okay, that the pain would end soon. It hadn't felt like he would be okay. He'd hurt very badly. Chase spotted a glass beside the dog collar. He remembered the man bringing him something to drink. It had tasted like some kind of berry concoction, but better than anything he'd ever tasted. When he'd finished one glass, he'd asked for more, but the man said he couldn't drink too much. Chase had growled at the man, sounding almost animal-like, not knowing where the urge had come from. Another noise sounded outside the bedroom door. Chase pushed the memories away and sat up a bit. Suddenly, the berry smell filled his senses again. The door opened, and the man carried in another glass. Chase swallowed as his mouth watered. He sat up. He didn't ask, but the man sat down on the edge of the mattress and put the glass in Chase's hands. He brought it to his lips and drank greedily. When he'd finished, the man took the glass from him. "Do you remember anything?" he asked. The momentary relief from the grief disappeared. The drowning sensation returned. "The plane crash." He guy nodded. "I'm sorry for your loss. Your father was a good man." Chase recalled seeing this man in the lab when they'd gone for the test. "Are you Jimmy?" "Yes." Chase's gut tightened. "My dad didn't trust you to look out for me," he said without thinking. Jimmy sighed. "We were just getting to know each other, but I've done all I can to help you, and I will continue to help you." Chase looked around. "Why am I not in the hospital? I was in a plane crash, for God's sakes." Jimmy reached out and touched Chase's arm. "Do you remember what bad shape you were in?" he asked. "Do you see any wounds on you now? Are any of your bones broken?" Chase looked down at his arms. He had a vague memory of not being able to move his right arm, and he hadn't been able to feel his legs. Fear swirled around his chest. He yanked the covers back, exposing his legs. He bent his knees up and then lowered them back on the bed. No wounds, no broken bones. He looked up. What happened? "There's a virus, the VI virus. Your father, you, and your sister were all carriers." No. Chase remembered what his sister had said about the strange virus. The virus that made people crave blood? His gaze shot to the glass in the man's hands. Was it blood? "No," Chase repeated. "This is crazy. I don't believe in vampires," he asked. Chase nodded. "How much do you know? Did your father explain?" "No," Chase said. "My sister, she read a file, but it can't be." "It is. I know it's hard." He looked at Chase with empathy. "I remember when someone explained it to me the first time. It felt crazy." He sighed. "It will take a while to get used to." He patted Chase's shoulder. "But you will be okay, and I'll be here to help you." Chase's mind ran like a fan, over and over, trying to figure out if he could really trust this guy. There was a sound at the door. "Oh, someone's wanting to see you." He got up and opened it. Baxter stormed in, his tail thumping, his whole body wiggling with joy. He let out a low moan, then jumped up on the bed and immediately started licking Chase's face. Chase's eyes filled with tears, and the dog licked them away too.
He finally looked at the man still standing there. He cleared his face of the weakness. "You found him?" he asked. "Yes. Is he okay?" Chase asked, running his hand over the dog's black fur. "Yeah, I think he is. I was worried about him at first. All he did was bark. I had a friend look after him when I went to find the plane. I was told he barked the whole time, never stopped, not even for 1 minute. As soon as I came in with you, he went silent." Chase remembered hearing Baxter when he'd been in that strange tunnel of light. It had been because he'd wanted to find the dog that he'd turned away. He'd heard Baxter's barks, or he'd thought he'd heard him. The dog whined and dropped his head on Chase's lap, licking his hand. "I'll leave you two alone. You'll be weak for a few more days, and then I'll show you a thing or two about what you can do now." Chase didn't understand, but he nodded. The man left. Chase reached over to the nightstand and picked up the dog collar. "This is for you, buddy," he said, his chest filled with grief. He changed out the dog's collar and then buried his face in Baxter's thick fur and let a few more tears fall. "I thought I'd lost you too, but no." He pulled back and took the dog's face in his hand and looked into his dark eyes. "It was really you, wasn't it? You called me back. I heard you." Somehow, Chase knew it was true. Baxter had saved his life. He didn't know how he could hear the dog from the mountainside, didn't know how he'd survive the crash, or what the hell had happened to him. Or, he looked at the glass with a red rim around it. Was that? Oh, hell. He still didn't know what was happening to him. He bent his legs again, remembering not being able to move them. And his arm, it had been broken. How had he healed so quickly? Taking a deep breath, he glanced at the collar. "Never turn your back on a challenge. Live, son." His dad's words echoed inside him. "Live for us." "I'll try, Dad. I'll try."